It was the summer of 1996. A small recording studio in Los Angeles was running a late-night shift. Only two people were still in the building, the security guard and the man who managed the archive room. The archive room sat at the very back of the studio. Rows of shelves, boxes of tapes, labels with dates, project names, and sometimes nothing more than a few letters. That night, the archivist was filing new deliveries, checking the log, straightening labels, sliding cases into place. He had just finished his third box when he noticed something that didn't belong. High on the top shelf, pushed back behind a stack of ordinary cassette cases, there was a black container different from the rest. On its lid, in large white letters, it read, "Do not play." On the side, a short line had been written, MJ12XX, 1995. The day had been smudged. Like it was written quickly, and then rubbed at with a thumb. The archivist had seen "do not play" warnings before. Sometimes it meant unfinished takes. Sometimes it meant legal problems. Sometimes it meant the artist didn't want anyone hearing a demo that was never meant to leave the room. But this box was in the wrong place. Boxes like that belonged in a locked cabinet. This one was sitting out in the open. He climbed up, pulled it down, and held it in both hands. He didn't open it. He just shook it gently. Inside was a single cassette and something else, thin and light, like a folded piece of paper. He froze for a second. Then he heard footsteps outside the door. The security guard appeared in the doorway. His name was Joe. He'd worked the building for years, quiet, reliable, the kind of man who didn't ask questions because he understood what questions could cost. The archivist raised the black box slightly. "Joe," he said, "do you have the key to the locked cabinet?" Joe nodded once. "I do. Why?" "This box shouldn't be out here." Joe's eyes hit the words "do not play," and his expression changed immediately, like something in him snapped from casual to alert. "Put it back," Joe said. "Don't touch it." The archivist blinked. "I'm not trying to steal it. I'm trying to file it where it belongs." Joe stepped inside but didn't come closer to the box. He stopped like there was an invisible line around it. "That one is special," Joe said. "Not tonight. Don't mess with it tonight." The archivist studied him. Joe wasn't the kind of guy who panicked. If Joe was nervous, it meant something. "Who brought it in?" the archivist asked. Joe hesitated, just long enough to tell the truth without meaning to. "Last winter," he said, "someone came here very late when the front lights were off." The archivist didn't ask who, because Joe's face already answered it. He said it anyway, quietly. "Michael?" Joe exhaled through his nose. "I didn't say a name," he replied. "You did." The archivist swallowed. "What is it? A song?" Joe shook his head. "I didn't listen. I don't listen. But I saw what happened that night." The archivist pulled a chair closer to the desk. "Tell me." Joe closed the archive door behind him. "Fine," he said, "but we're not playing that tape. We're locking it up. In the morning, the manager can deal with it." The archivist nodded, even though he felt the pull already, the way forbidden things tug at curiosity. Joe leaned back against the wall and spoke like he was reciting something he'd tried to forget. That night, a black vehicle had pulled up to the back entrance. The plate was hard to read. The doorbell never rang. Someone inside opened the door like they were expecting them. 3 people came in. 2 moved first, scanning the hallway. The third walked between them with a hat pulled low. Not tall, not loud, not dramatic. But Joe knew the walk, the rhythm in it. Joe said, "You can recognize certain people even when they're trying not to be recognized." They didn't bring an entourage. No crowd, no instruments. Just a small bag in the man's hand. They went straight to the main recording room. Joe waited in the corridor. He didn't follow. He didn't stare. In that business, you survived by minding your position. For a long time, there was no music, no rehearsal, no talking, just silence. Then almost 40 minutes later, Joe heard a click, like someone had turned on a mic or hit a switch. Silence again. And then very faintly, the sound of a voice. Not singing, talking. Low enough that you could barely catch it through the thick walls, but real enough to make the hair on your arms lift. The archivist's eyes narrowed. "What did you hear?" Joe looked down. "Not full sentences," he said. "Fragments. But some words stick to you." He remembered hearing the word child. He remembered the word hospital. He remembered the word door, a broken sentence that sounded like, "Don't let anyone see this." The archivist's throat went dry. He looked at the black box again. Joe continued, "They stayed inside for almost 2 hours. When the man finally came out, Joe saw his face for a second under the hallway light. The archivist asked, "Was it really him?" Joe didn't hesitate. "Yeah." The air in the archive room felt different after that, like the story had weight, and now it was sitting on the table between them. Joe added a detail the archivist didn't expect. When he left, Joe said, he didn't have the bag anymore. The archivist frowned. "He left it inside?" Joe nodded. "And the tape, he didn't take it with him." Joe explained that the studio owner came down the hallway that night. There was a short conversation, very short. Not friendly, not rude, just quick, like a transaction that wasn't money. Joe said he heard one clear sentence from the man in the hat. "Lock it." Then he walked out the same way he came in. Joe waited until the back door closed. Then he stepped into the room briefly, only because the studio owner asked him to help. On a table near the console there was the black container. Back then it didn't say "Do not play." The archivist asked, "Who wrote that warning?" Joe said, "The owner. I know his handwriting. He presses hard. The letters look like they're carved." The archivist turned the box, studying the sharp strokes. Joe was right. The writing wasn't careful. It was urgent, like someone writing to stop their own hands from shaking. The archivist stared at the container a long moment. He felt the temptation. Because there it was, a tape labeled MJ, sealed behind two words that screamed the same thing. Don't. Don't. He opened the box anyway. Joe's head snapped up. "Hey." But it was already open. Inside was a plain cassette, no song title, no track list, no studio stamp. Just two letters written in thin marker, MJ, and the folded paper he'd felt earlier. The archivist unfolded it carefully. A time was written at the top, 3:17 a.m. Below it one sentence, no signature. "If you hear this, don't try to prove anything to anyone." The archivist looked up at Joe. "What does that mean?" Joe's jaw tightened. "It means we shouldn't be hearing it." There was a tape player on the desk used for checking archive quality. The archivist's job was literally to verify whether tapes had recorded properly, whether they were blank, damaged, distorted. His fingers moved toward the cassette. Joe stepped forward fast. "No." The archivist tried to keep his voice calm. "Just a few seconds. I need to know if it's actually recorded." "No, Joe." Joe's voice sharpened. "That tape is not your job." The archivist paused. Because Joe was right. There were tapes you cataloged, and tapes you never even admit you saw. But the archivist did it anyway. He slid the cassette in. He pressed play. The wheels turned. At first there was nothing. Not static, real emptiness. Like the mic had been left open before recording started. Then a faint breath. The squeak of a chair. Someone sat down close to the microphone. And then a voice. Not singing. Not performing. "Just speaking today," the voice said. "I went to a hospital." Joe took a step back, like the words physically pushed him. The archivist didn't move. The voice continued. "No one knew. No one saw. That's how it had to be." A pause. "There's a child there. I won't say the name." The archivist's hand hovered near the stop button. He didn't press it. The voice went on. "The child didn't recognize me. And that was good." Another breath. The mother was there. She didn't talk much. She just watched the child. Like if she stopped watching, the child might disappear. Joe leaned in close to the archivist and whispered, "Turn it off." The archivist's eyes stayed on the spinning cassette. The voice continued. The child held out a music box. It was broken. He asked, "Can you fix it?" There was a faint click on the recording, like something being opened. "I can't remember the last time someone asked me, can you?" the voice said. "Most people just tell me, do it." The archivist felt his stomach tighten. The voice went on. "I fixed the music box. It was simple." But the child laughed. And when he laughed, the room sounded different. A pause. The child showed me a drawing. A person. No face. The voice slowed, like it was replaying the moment. I asked, "Why no face?" The child said, "Because if I draw a face, I can't forget. And if I can't forget, it hurts." Joe whispered again, more urgent now. "We don't know if this is real." The archivist didn't answer. Because the truth was, at that moment, he didn't care if it was real. It felt real. That was the danger. The voice continued. Then the child asked me, "Are you real?" And I didn't answer. A breath. Because sometimes you need proof before you can say I'm real. And I didn't have proof for myself. The archive room stayed silent except for the tape. The voice lowered. Before I left, the child said, "When you go, this room will be quiet again. But at least now I know what quiet looks like." The archivist closed his eyes. Even if it was dramatized, that line had teeth. The voice continued. The child held out a pencil. He said, "Draw your face. So if you go, I won't forget you." A pause. Longer. I didn't draw a face. Joe's voice turned hard. Enough. But the tape kept going. I didn't draw a face, the voice repeated, because sometimes a face starts a goodbye. And that day, I didn't want to start a goodbye. The sound of paper moving. I wrote one sentence in the corner of the drawing. The archivist leaned forward without meaning to. The voice said the sentence slowly, clearly. Even if no one sees it, kindness is real. The tape ran a few seconds more, then emptiness again, and the recording ended. The archivist hit stop. The room felt colder. Joe didn't speak for a long time. Then he said only one thing. "Now you understand why it needed a lock." The archivist took the cassette out, placed it back into the box, folded the paper exactly the way it had been folded, and shut the lid. "This shouldn't be out here," he said. Joe nodded once. "In the morning, the manager handles it." The archivist didn't put it back on the shelf. He carried it to the locked cabinet. Joe handed over the key. They placed the box inside. The door closed with a quiet, final click. They didn't talk for the rest of the shift. In the morning, the studio owner arrived. The archivist told him, "We put the box in the locked cabinet." The owner didn't look up. He just said, "Good." The archivist assumed the box would sit there forever. But months later, when he checked the cabinet, it was gone. No note, no sign out, no explanation. Who took it? When? Where did it go? No one asked. And no one wanted to be the person who did. Because some recordings aren't songs. Some recordings are a person trying to unload something they can't carry in public. And if that kind of recording falls into the wrong hands, it doesn't just ruin a career, it burns everything around it. Years later, the archivist still remembered the sentence on that folded paper. "If you hear this, don't try to prove anything to anyone, because some stories lose their meaning the moment you try to use them as evidence." Some stories were never meant to be shared. They were meant to survive one night. Maybe that tape wasn't recorded to be released. Maybe it was recorded because for one night someone needed to speak into a microphone without performing. And maybe that's why the warning was written so large across the lid, "Do not play."